Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 52. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Hooked on Wooden Boats. Happy birthday to you and many more. Yes, folks, this is your host, Dan Matson, and it is the 1-year anniversary of Hooked on Wooden Boats. It's our birthday, and I am pretty excited about that. Been doing this for 52 weeks now, and having an absolute blast. I don't know how I could ever stop doing this. It's one of those things I can't not do. Although my dad told me never to use double negatives when I took English in junior high. But, yeah, this is really fun stuff. And I am super excited today to have a really special interview for the first anniversary of Hooked on Wooden Boats. So you're going to want to stick around for the featured segment today, which is an hour-long interview. It's actually an hour and 5 minutes with Lin and Larry Pardy of sailing fame. And if you don't know of Lin and Larry, they, over the last 40 plus years, have been sailing around the world in 2 wooden vessels that they built themselves. They've written a bunch of books, done a bunch of videos, and I had the opportunity to sit down with them in Port Townsend this past weekend, the day before the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival started, and interview them. And so for me, this was kind of like, imagine that you're a reporter and you've started, and a year later, you're an unknown reporter, and you get an interview with the Queen of England, or the Shah of Iran, or the President of the United States. That's how this felt. It was really cool. Larry and Lin are awesome people, very down to earth. We connected right away. It was a lot of fun, so stick around for that interview. Please connect with me. You can do so via email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats. You can subscribe to my monthly e-newsletter at hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. You can leave comments on my website under the blog post, hookedonwoodenboats.com. It's all about wooden boats, folks. You can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. If you look for Wooden Boat Dan there, you can call my voicemail feedback hotline at 424-261-2360. So today's episode is going to be probably the longest one I've put out. Normally they're 30 to 50 minutes in length. This one's probably going to be hour and 20 minutes. So you may want to listen to it in 2 parts. You may not, but I've got some stuff I want to talk about and then play the interview with Lin and Larry. So last weekend was the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival, and I spent the whole weekend there, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Actually car camped for the first time, which is kind of interesting. I've got a little minivan, so I rolled out a little mattress and a sleeping bag, and I would wake up about every hour and wonder if somebody was shining their flashlight in on me. But I figure I saved 2 nights of camping, which is maybe $30 or so, and that paid for my round-trip ferry to Port Townsend, so that was good. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm back. So the thing is, the day before the festival, I think it was Thursday morning, I sent out a little note to my e-news subscribers, and which is about 125 people right now, and told them, hey, you know what? I'm going to be in Port Townsend this weekend. I'm doing a little presentation. I'm going to interview some really cool people like Lin and Larry Pardy and John Harris. from CLC Boats. And if you're going to be there or if you can make it, give me a call. Here's my cell phone number. Let's hook up. And so later that day, I get an email from Corey Rubin in Florida. Corey's been listening to my podcast since it started. He's fallen in love with wooden boats and sailing. And he and his girlfriend, Christina, have some real cool dreams for the future. So he sent me this really cool email, and I asked him to actually call my voicemail feedback hotline and read the email, because it's kind of fun hearing it from the person that sent it rather than me reading it. So I'm going to play that voice message right now. So take it away, Corey.
Hey, Dan. Corey Rubin here from Central Florida. Just wanted to call and let you know that your podcast for the past couple months has altered mine and my girlfriend's lives a little bit. We just bought spontaneously 2 tickets to the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival last night, and we're going to fly out to Seattle tomorrow afternoon to do basically a little scouting mission for what might turn into a cross-country car camp in my tiny car to attend the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building from 13 to 14. So looking forward to meeting you out there and meeting all kinds of good people, and the Pardys, too. That's a big one. They're a huge inspiration for us. So I'll see you out there. Thanks, Dan.
So here's the cool thing. Because of this little podcast I started a year ago, Corey and Christina, on the spur of the moment, flew up to Seattle, drove to Port Townsend, came to the festival. I got to hook up with them. We had dinner. We hung out together. They had the opportunity to spend some time with the Pardys. Actually ended up having breakfast with them one morning accidentally. So it was really cool. And they are planning on a year from now moving to Port Townsend area, and Corey going to the wooden boat school there, Christina working, and then after that, at some point, building a wooden sailboat and sailing the world to high seas. So this is really fun stuff. Also got to meet up with Ralph Duncan, who's one of the podcast listeners, and he came up from Silverdale, Washington. So the 4 of us hooked up and spent some time together, and that was kind of the first unofficial Hooked on Wooden Boats meetup. So that was really cool. So the weekend was fabulous at the festival. I got to interview some really cool people, which I'm going to be playing those interviews over the next 4 to 6 weeks. Steve Stone from Off Center Harbor, Eric Blake, also from Off Center Harbor, and a shipwright at Brooklyn Boatyard in Brooklyn, Maine, John Harris of CLC Boats, Freya Fenwood of Pygmy Kayak, Dale and Linda Burright, who built a 26-foot Calkins bartender. I got to catch up with Howard Rice and John Welsford, a little short interview there. Also, Josh Colvin and Anika Colvin. Got to get an update from them with Scamp and their magazine, Small Craft Advisor magazine. And I got to catch up with Tug Busey on an interview also, which I've interviewed Tug in the past. And I got to do a little interview with Thomas Scheinflug. It's a German name. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but I think I'm pretty close. And Thomas was crewing on the Pacific Grace, which is a gorgeous schooner. I can't remember the length. It's over 100 feet, that was finished about 10 years ago. And that's a training vessel, really cool. So I did some really outstanding interviews, had an absolute blast. Gave a presentation on Sunday about Hooked on Wooden Boats. And I ran into some technical difficulties. First thing that happened is I got up to the room to give the presentation, went to plug in my computer, and the power adapter that goes into the wall was missing the plug portion. It's a 2-part piece, and I had just had that earlier that morning. So I was left with a computer that had about 30% battery power. And then we had technical difficulties hooking up to the smart board. We finally got her hooked up. Anyway, the presentation went okay. I ran out of battery power towards the end, got the warning message, got rid of that, finished playing the video interview, raffled off a few things, and so it was a good learning experience. I'm going to do some things differently next year, but it was definitely fun. And actually next year I'm thinking about possibly giving a presentation on building a 12-foot lap straight canoe, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm just about done with it, about 85%. Haven't worked on it in the last week because I've been so busy, but all I've got left to do is paint and varnish the boat. So I may do that next year. We'll see what happens. But if you can make it to a wooden boat festival anywhere near where you live, go for it, because there's a lot of really fun people. It's an artsy, crafty, historical thing. It's so much fun. It's just like, wow. I mean, I had so much fun. I don't know how one person could have that much fun. I mean, I actually felt like two people at times because I was having as much fun as two people could have. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, can't say enough good about that. Also made some connections for future interviews in the Port Townsend area. Casey Cronkite, who has sailed her Spitzgatter, I believe that's how you pronounce it, which is a Danish-Norwegian boat. Double-ended sailboat, has sailed that around the world. And also I'm going to hook up with John Lockwood in the future from Pygmy Kayak, the founder there, to talk about what he's up to and his story. So got some really fun stuff planned. So you're going to want to come back for those interviews. Next up is the wooden boat tip of the week. I believe this is number 4 in the series that I started about a month ago. I went to an epoxy demonstration done by Bruce Blatchley of the Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building, and he was talking about how to put fiberglass cloth and epoxy over wooden part of a boat to protect it. And one of the things that he did is a pretty simple thing that I have not done before, is when he was using a foam roller to saturate the fiberglass cloth, he was doing a little, I think it was a flat deck part. He would lay the cloth over, and then he mixed up his epoxy, and he had a little piece of Akumi plywood. Doesn't have to be Akumi, it could be any kind of plywood, like 1/2 inch, that was probably about 6 inches wide, maybe 10 inches long. And after he got his epoxy mixed up in a little paper cup, he would pour part of it out on this little piece of plywood, which he called a pallet. Then he would use that to roll out the epoxy onto his foam roller to get a nice even distribution on the roller. And then from there, he would take the roller to the fiberglass and roll it about 5 or 6 inches back and forth about once or twice. And it would put a nice even coat of epoxy on the glass cloth. Then he would go back, pour a little more epoxy on the pallet, roll out the foam roller again, make it nice and even on the roller, the distribution of the epoxy, and then go back to the cloth and do another 5 to 6 inches. So that was new to me and totally makes sense. I mean, it's not a rocket science kind of thing, but I've always kind of tried to work out of the cup and pour it onto the cloth and then roll it out. And if you do that, you get some heavier spots, and you've got to come back with some kind of a scraper and remove the excess epoxy. So this pallet method is awesome. I would highly recommend it. And I'm going to put some information on the show notes today about how to do that. So think about doing that. Take a 6x10 piece of plywood, pour your epoxy onto that, roll out your foam roller, and then fill your fiberglass cloth from there. Thinking that would work for other types of things also, maybe even painting a boat. But anyway, that's the tip of the week, tip number 4. I would like to give a shout out to the new subscribers to Hooked on Wooden Boats. We've got 5 new subscribers in the last week, which is pretty cool. Thank you, Mark Shemansky, Michael Berta, Ralph Zur, spelled S-Z-U-R, so I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Ralph, Brad Peterson, and Bert Atkinson. Welcome to the monthly e-newsletter distribution list. I look forward to hooking up with you guys and staying in contact, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. which you probably are. You wouldn't have subscribed to the e-newsletter. So if you do want to subscribe and you haven't subscribed, again, you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. I won't try to sell you anything. It's a place for me to connect with people that like what I'm doing, talk about some of the projects I'm working on, provide some resources. Occasionally I'll throw in a little video clip. That's kind of fun to look at, so that's what it's all about. We are going to move on now to the interview with Lin and Larry Pardy. That's spelled Pardey. Their website is landlpardey.com, and you can buy books and videos and really cool stuff. You can sign up for their blog. Really great place to go for sailing tips, boat building tips. They've got a bunch of books. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the interview. I'm sure you will. So let's take it away, Lin and Larry. Okay, it is September 6, 2012, and I'm sitting with Lin and Larry Pardy of sailing fame. Lin and Larry, welcome to the show today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And at a particularly fun festival, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're here a day before the festival officially starts, and appreciate you guys hooking up with me, even though you had no idea who I was. You just got an email and showed up here for this podcast, so that's really fun. So, Lin, let's start with you. I want to ask about your youth, what it was like. I understand you grew up in Michigan, at least for a few years, and moved to California, but tell me about your childhood, what that was like.
Well, my childhood was wonderful, actually. I look back at it and I almost feel guilty how much fun it was and what really special parents I had. But my father was a tool and die maker and worked with his hands. And one of my favorite things was to watch him build things for the family, but also he had a little shop at home where he did machining work. And the most magic thing I ever saw was he used to machine measuring blocks out of steel that they used for getting perfect measurements of different precision parts. So he'd mill them so fine that he'd take two pieces of normal metal, no magnetism, no nothing, and stick them together, and I couldn't get them apart. You had to slide them to get them apart. The machine so close. I thought that was really magic, and I find out that's the way machinists work with that kind of tolerance. But he took us sailing as a family. His biggest joy in life was a little 13-foot Old Town sloop, which was a little Labstrake sloop built in Michigan. Yeah. And he took us sailing on the lakes of Michigan for about a month each year. We shared a cabin with two other families, which meant I was the youngest of 7 boys. And my mother was pretty good about handling the situation. When I used to come home crying because the boys didn't wait for me, she used to say, if you can't keep up with them, invent something that you do that's so interesting that they want to stay with you. She says, but don't come crying to me.
Were some of these your brothers, Lin?
Well, I had a brother.
You had a brother,
but all the rest were the two other families,
okay.
And they were great to me.
Yeah.
But sometimes they did use me a little bit like a basketball.
Yeah.
But
Lin was small when she was a kid.
I was small when I was a kid. Not much has changed. But no, I was always the littlest. But they were wonderful. The guys were pretty darn good to me. But I learned the lesson that if you want to enjoy life, you have to get out there in the rough and tumble and keep up with them. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But my dad sold the boat. We moved to California just before I was 6 years old, and that was my sailing experience.
Okay.
Until when I was 12 or 13, my dad used to be able to rent a boat in Newport Beach. We moved to California, and the whole family would drive together for 2 hours down to Newport Beach, where my dad could afford to rent a boat for 2 hours.
A bay bomber.
Called the Balboa Bay Bomber. They were called Balboa boats, but we all called them.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's not the Hess boat.
Oh, no. These, I think, were like Lido 14s would be the closest kind of boats. Mm-hmm. And the whole family would go sailing for 2 hours. And I remember one thing I did. The one thing I remember from that is my dad always would go to windward for the first hour. Because that way he was sure to get the boat back on time, because he'd couldn't afford to pay for any extra time.
Funny. Don't go downwind first.
Don't go downwind first. So
Smart move.
Yeah, he was a smart guy.
But we're talking, like I say, one day a year until I was about 13 or 14.
Okay.
So my sailing experience was only memories. And the two memories were that my dad was always very happy when he was on that boat.
Yeah.
He looked like king of the world. So one time that I always saw my dad looking really confident, and the other was this beating to windward first so that you could run home and be there on time.
That's hilarious. So you went to school in what part? Were you in Los Angeles itself?
I went to school in the San Fernando Valley, a place called Pacoima was the closest town that people would recognize.
Yeah.
And I grew up next door to the field where they kept Francis the Talking Mule. And there was actually 5 Francises, but there was a television program, so over my back fence was all these mules on this farm. So it was a really nice place to grow up in the valley, and it doesn't exist anymore, as many people know, because when I grew up there was 30,000 people in the San Fernando Valley and 3 million orange trees. And now there's 3 million people and 30,000 orange trees maybe in people's backyards.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's changed completely, but it was a wonderful place to grow up. My mother used to tell me to get out of her hair and go play on the freeway, and she meant it because they started building the Golden State Freeway and then they ran out of money, and it was a block and a half away was this 20-mile long strip of grass that eventually became a freeway. But
Really?
For about 5 years I was growing up, we used to go and all of us would meet down there and play on the freeway.
That's hilarious.
Everyone thought it was a joke. They said, who's ever going to really build a freeway here? Well, take a look now.
Funny.
So sailing was the farthest thing from my mind. I grew up, that's the edge of the desert out there, and we used to go out to the desert and play racing cars, and boating was not...
So it was very rural out there at that time.
It was just the edge of rural.
Edge of rural, yeah.
So it was really nice. Chatsworth was a place family would go climbing. So my family did like the outdoors. As I passed the age of 14, I didn't like the outdoors at all because it messed my hair up and screwed my nails up. And I was much more interested in being terribly girly and school. I loved school and loved studying numbers, music. So
Did you play some instruments, Lynn?
I played the piano quite seriously for about 8 or 9 years of my youth, and until I found out that I was a very good technician and I wasn't a musician. There's a difference. That Larry encouraged me to play piano whenever we were building a boat or in a place where we were there for a while, but later he got me a guitar, which turned out to be much more portable.
Yeah.
Much more.
And a piano.
I like to sing.
Lighter, too.
Yeah.
And my whole family liked singing. My mother sang with a professional choir, classic choir, not church. And she had a beautiful voice, and the whole family liked to sing together and do singing and musical things. So,
so there were 2 kids in the family?
There's 3 children. There was a surprise.
Okay.
My sister, who came along much later, 8 years later than me, and we figured my mother brought her along so we'd have a toy to play with. And when she was a year old, my mother started screaming at my brother and I, put her down. She's got her own legs. If you don't let her walk, she'll never learn to do it on her own, because we carried her everywhere. And she was so much fun. So I had a really ideal upbringing. Family insisted on us being serious about education. We didn't
And
have...
you went to college after high school?
That was a bit of a problem. I wanted to be a civil engineer by the time I was getting near college. So I did go off to what that was called, State College at Northridge, California State College at Northridge, which later became part of the University of California. But it was brand new at that time, and they came up against a professor who didn't want women in his physics class. That was just didn't think women should go into the School of Engineering, and at that time he didn't have to take students that he didn't want to. It was before equal rights. People don't remember those times when professors could discrimination didn't exist. They just didn't want women in their classes. So it kind of discouraged me. But on the other hand, I didn't find university. It didn't fit me. I was so used to being the top of my class everywhere I'd been, and in schools where I knew everybody and knew what I was doing. And here, all of a sudden, I was in classes with 200 and 300 people, first year college classes, and I also don't think I really knew what I wanted to do. I hadn't really found what I wanted, so I ended up doing a lot of card playing in the cafeteria with a boyfriend whose mother was a grandmaster at bridge and who used to coach us. And 9 months later, I was given choice to and asked to leave the university because of the gambling had gotten out of control. You're fleecing. We had a good system going. We played. And I looked so innocent and small and young.
People trusted you, right?
They still, yeah.
They still do.
They still do.
She wouldn't cheat me.
We weren't exactly cheating. We just giving each other better information than they had.
Yeah.
We just did a hell of a lot of practicing too. But it wasn't my skill. It was the training.
Yeah.
But it really was the best thing that ever happened. I wasn't ready for university.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to work for a small tool company. The owner, the owner had died and left the company to his employees. And one of the employees had a construction company, and he moved the offices into the offices of this tool company, and I was hired as the office manager, just a general dog's body, because I was very good with numbers right from the beginning, liked numbers. And one of the other owners of the company was an accountant, and he said, okay, let's just start training you. He says, you're so good with numbers, let's show you how the American tax system works, let's start showing you about how small businesses work. And he really took me under his wing, and for a year I managed all the books for all three companies.
Wow.
And all he drummed into me right from the beginning was cash flow. He says that is the lifeblood of any small business, and the one thing small businessmen forget to take the time to do. And he said debt is slavery. And that
stuck with you, huh?
It did. It really did.
Yeah.
So so he was wonderful. It was fun working because it's what my mind needs, which is variety, challenges, every day different. But then I saw this job with Bob's Big Boy Hamburgers that also included the newest and latest thing. They needed someone who was interested in learning about computers. And they were the first company to have an IBM 1040 outside of the military.
Wow.
And so they needed someone with accounting skills, interested in numbers, interested in learning about computers.
What year was that?
That would be 1964. So I went to Bob's Big Boy Hamburgers, had franchises all over the country.
Remember when he interviewed you, the job?
They asked me what I could do.
Yeah.
And I said, anything you want.
Great answer.
Hired on the spot, huh?
I was.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, but they wanted to know. But the funniest thing is, I had the world's biggest inferiority complex, and I still haven't completely gotten over it. But I just realized that if I just tried things and I failed, the worst that would happen is they'd fire me.
Yeah.
And at that time, my feeling was, I'm 20 years old. If I don't like it here, I'm fired. I can go and try something completely different, and I can, try it. Was my whole feeling, and it was good fun. And maybe it wouldn't work for everybody, but for me it did. But when I went to work there, I was fascinated. I ended up sitting between the computer department and the accounting department, trying to explain to each of them what the other could do. Because they gave me some training. I spent a week and a half with specialists there learning the potential of the computer.
And that took up probably a whole room or part of a room or
two
rooms? Yeah.
It was very large.
They had to refrigerate it too, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it was mainly, basically the biggest part, that's it'll go away.
Yeah.
The biggest part of the computer was the air conditioners. But it was peg boards and wires, and it was fascinating. It really was. But more fascinating than that was the fact that I was not enjoying the guys I was dating. And I was dating all my brother's university friends because he was in a nice fraternity, and they were all fun. But I just didn't feel very satisfied, and I still to this day do not know why it came into my mind. There was a picture across the room from me of a big schooner, black and white photograph. And I turned to the guy who was working next to me and I said, I've saved up $200, which would be probably the equivalent to $2,000, $2,500 nowadays. And I'm going to buy myself a sailboat. And it just came to me, that moment, and, psychological, but it's obviously that picture had been turning in my mind.
Yeah.
And the guy next to me said, well, that schooner over there, and I didn't know what a schooner was at the time. See that schooner over there? He says, the company owns that. And he said, if you're really interested in buying a sailboat, call the skipper of the schooner. He can give you some information. Because that's where I'd start if I were you. Mm-hmm. So it turned out I'd been actually doing the accounts for that schooner. I've been working on the accounts for the Double Eagle. And it was owned by the company, but Bob Wine, who actually owned the company, was using the boat. It was part of their tuna fleet. Mm-hmm. It'd come with a fleet of tuna boats that they'd purchased.
Shrimp boats.
Shrimp boats. So I called the skipper, and he said, well, we happen to have a little 8-foot tender that called Scamp or something like that.
I forget.
Yeah. And it would be a perfect beginner's boat. And if you come down, I'll throw it to you sometime. So I said, I'll be right down. And I drove 120 miles or something like down to Newport after work. And the skipper was quite shocked to find, when I knocked on the side of this big schooner and the skipper put his head over the side, he said to me, are you the old the hag from head office? He said, you're the hag from head office. And he looked down at me, and I was wearing high heels and tight skirt and thoroughly inappropriate. But he took me out for dinner, and on the way we stopped in a bar because he had to give someone the car keys that, I guess he'd moved somebody's boat and had the keys for their car or something. And Larry was playing pool there.
Oh.
It's that simple. And Larry came walking over and says, hey, Bob, who's the chick? First words I ever heard him say. And Bob said, her name's Lin, she's with me, you're playing pool, see you later. And turned out Larry had stolen another girlfriend from him previously, and the skipper,
He's a little defensive.
he was a little defensive. There were little jealousies there. But the next day, so long story short, I looked at the little boat, and he said, why don't you come down and I'll give you a sailing lesson and see if you really want to do this. He was very nice and didn't try to talk me into anything, or maybe he was trying to talk me into a date or something, I don't know. But so I said, I'll come down back tomorrow and try this. And the next day I drove down, and once again, 100 and something miles. And the 4 freeways were as efficient, although now they've become just as inefficient because they're clogged up out there.
Right.
But went to have the sailing lesson, and the schooner wasn't there. And I'm not used to going down to docks and walking around docks or anything, but I was standing there where this big empty space of water was, and Larry drove in his little MGTC, and he said, aren't you Lin? He drove into this parking lot right there. I said, yeah. And he said, I met you last night. He says, if you're looking for Bob Sloan, he's probably off on a charter or something. He gets called away quite often. So why don't you come and have a cup of coffee with me? So I really didn't have a better answer, so we walked into the cafe that was just there. So the restaurant was right near the boat landing, that's why he was there. Mm-hmm. And while we were having our coffee poured, Sloan walks in and says, hey, Larry, I thought Lin was with me. And Larry says, and these hilarious quotes now, early bird gets the worm. And that's where it all started. I ran away with Larry 3 dates later.
Oh, wow. Cool.
He was doing something exciting and fun. He was a yacht skipper.
Yeah.
He had a keel timber and was just starting to
make Serrafyn at that time?
Yeah, he was just starting to build his first boat, and he was skipper on a 30-ton, 53-footer.
Okay.
And a charter boat. Mm-hmm. And he'd just come back from sailing with Bob Sloan on the big schooner over to Hawaii and back, and making a film over there.
Wow.
So to me, he was everything my brother's friends weren't.
Yeah.
He was doing something on his own. He had big dreams. It wasn't about sitting up late at night and talking about how to save the world. It was about how to get out and do something that you want to do.
Yeah, cool. Let's pause there for a second, and then Larry, tell me about your background, your youth, growing up, and you were at Lake Shuswap in Canada?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I was there till I was about 15 years old.
Okay.
From about 6 years old to 15. Mm-hmm. And I grew up on a lake, and I had several boats on the lake. Mm-hmm. And even a dugout canoe that was really desperate and needing repairs. It was cracked for about 6 feet long. Oh
wow.
And I tried several methods of repairing it, none of which were successful. And I learned what didn't work.
Yeah. So you just did that on your own, just experimented, or did you have some help? Or
I was, I guess, 14 or something like that. And I was interested in working with my hands. My grandfather was an excellent craftsman. He could do anything. And he was my fund of knowledge. And
he lived close by to where you were?
Well, yeah, nearby.
Yeah.
And those were my first boats. And I had a 12-foot rowing boat that I put a sail on. It was a cedar pole and a blanket, a wool blanket.
Oh, really?
And I found out it would only go one way, downwind. Funny about that.
Yeah.
And, then we moved down to the coast, and I got into sailing more.
What coast did you move to?
The British Columbia coast.
Okay, yeah.
And we lived in North Vancouver, and I belonged to the West Vancouver Yacht Club.
The reason he got into boats is he lost his driver's license from hot rodding. Right?
I guess so. Simple way of saying that. It was more traumatic than that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So I bought a El Toro dinghy. Was my first sailing boat. Mm-hmm. And I proceeded to scare the daylights out of my girlfriend, taking her out in it. And she's never forgotten it either.
But she's still a girlfriend. The both of us.
And then I bought a 20-foot double ender, a little baby Colin Archer.
Okay.
And with a lid on it. And it was a nice little boat, particularly in the wintertime or when it was raining.
Yeah.
And it had a Briggs & Stratton inboard, and we could keep our legs warm with it was air cooled.
Oh, sit by the engine.
Yeah. Put a blanket over our legs. And
Yeah.
And then my dad bought that boat for me, and I bought a 27-foot Taleisin sloop. And by this time, I was working, and I had a full-time job. And I bought this 27-foot Taleisin sloop, which was a magnificent boat. It was all built out of one mahogany log.
You're kidding.
Everything was varnished except the bottom paint.
Wow.
Right down to the bilges and everything.
This was before you met Lin?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it gave me an appreciation of good workmanship.
Yeah.
And
so that was a plank on frame boat?
Yeah.
But it had steel frames.
It had steel frames every third one.
Oh, wow.
The building molds were the steel frames.
I see.
They planked it, and then they got the frames inside it.
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah.
It was copper riveted. Except the steel frames had iron rivets, galvanized iron roads.
Wow.
It was built for the Crown Prince of Denmark by the
Really?
Norwegians.
And that was when you were up in British Columbia, you had that boat?
Yeah, Canadian industrialist brought it over from Denmark, and somehow Captain of the Navy bought it, and I bought it from him.
Wow.
But
Was it a sloop rig or?
Yeah, 3/4 rig sloop.
Larry raced it really, really successfully.
Oh, okay.
Larry started out racing, and it's kind of funny. He gave me a copy of the book that really got him racing, because Larry told me that his dream was always to get off cruising and get away, and from the time he
Get longer holidays than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking more like 2 or 3 months.
Exactly.
yeah, but so he read a book by Uffa Fox that said the best way to really learn how to sail is to join the local club racing, because by going out racing you get out in all weathers. You learn to maneuver the boat without thinking about any engines, because you can't on the race course, and you learn to maneuver it in close quarters, because on the starting line and around buoys.
Yeah.
So that sailing becomes your first love and your first inclination. And so Larry told me that
It was good advice, and still is good advice.
Yeah. So you were in a sailing club for quite a few years up there in Vancouver?
Yeah, several years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he
West
became,
Van Yacht Club.
he became the junior commodore, teaching all the juniors how to sail. Or
I think they taught me more than I taught them.
So he was a sailor first.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big part of our success, is that we
look for sailing solutions, not engine solutions, or mechanical solutions of various types.
Yeah.
But also the sailing was always adding the adventure to the whole thing, so that we went. I don't know how much your audience knows about us so far, but we voyaged for year after year, and
40 plus years.
40 some years, and it always was about the sailing, without looking for it wasn't about a lifestyle for us. So there was always the new adventure of how to sail into new places successfully.
Yeah.
And to enjoy the sailing and to meet the people who were sailing, because sailing has a common thread that goes right from the Bible through all of the people you meet along the waterways. You have something in common with the fishermen, you have something in common with the commercial seamen. So it was a whole world of people, not just a lifestyle to let us go to a different country and sit in go and see the museums. It was part of this whole culture
I see.
and the history of sailing, and it's really interesting. And one of our favorite things that we did sailing was following Ulysses' trail and thinking about the problems when we were in the Mediterranean. Other people complained about, there's really no wind here, and we said, but Ulysses moved around the sea, and sure, he rowed a bit, but you can't row all over this place. So we would read.
But he
the
didn't have
histories.
light weather sails.
But he didn't have the light weather sails we had.
Sails, right?
So where he rode, we used nylon sails quite often. But still, so the sailing, Larry's sailing background and racing background really added, I think, tremendously to our life.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you get to California, Larry?
Hitchhike.
Really?
Yeah.
And why'd you go down there?
It was an affluent area, and I was probably going to get a job of some kind.
Okay, what kind of work were you doing?
I wanted to do something with boats, and I got a job eventually on this charter boat, the 53-foot ketch we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And I was working on it eventually 3 days a week, and then I had 4 days to work on my boat.
To build your boat.
Which was pretty well perfect, because I still had an income.
Yeah.
And so I got $400 a month, I remember.
Yeah.
And that I couldn't put that much into the boat. No way could you spend that much money on the boat.
Really?
In a month.
Oh man.
How did he get from here to there? He eventually sold the pretty little Taleisin that he had upgraded it quite a bit.
Did you sail it down to California?
No, he sold it.
I sold it. Okay, yeah.
And and found out that he wasn't happy with the jobs he was doing up there. So then he said, "Well, I've got $5,000 in my pocket," which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
We're talking about $55,000 maybe, it'd be the equivalent
right.
now. And he's 24 years old. And
I remember when I went through immigration at the border, and this guy was interviewing me because I had to show I was going down there and not just gonna live off the land, you know.
Yeah.
And so I had to show him my bank account in the bank book, you know.
Really?
And he looked at me and he said, "Here you're single, no wife, $5,000. God, I wish I was you."
And Larry had found that he'd had a pretty good job and lost it because he wasn't an office worker. He'd gotten a good job in Crown Zellerback selling toilet paper. What did he used to say to me?
Our sales show we've touched a new bottom this year.
But Larry was not cut out for it. He made a couple clerical errors, and they asked him to leave. And he says, "Okay, I've got this money in the bank. Let's go do something." And he went down to look for a cruising boat.
In other words, I got fired.
Yeah. So
might have been the best thing that ever happened to you.
Yay!
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
So he was looking for a boat to go cruising.
Yeah.
Remember, he grew up in the era when John Guswell had just come back and written a book about building a boat in his mother's garage, 20-foot boat, and then he sailed it around the world for 5 years, and a book called Trekka, John Guswell's Trekka Around the World, wonderful book.
Wow.
And he just had a wondrous time, and he met some of the great voyaging sailors, and he came back to Vancouver and was interviewed by the newspaper. The Sunday paper made a big deal out of it, and one of the interviewers asked, "How much did you have in your pocket when you left?" And John had $500. He said, "How much did you come back with?" And he came back with $300.
And I said, "That's for me."
And he's had all these adventures.
You keep 60% of what you leave with, right?
Or earn some on the way. But so Larry was spurred on by seeing people.
Did you read that book, Larry?
Yeah, he was a big influence. He was 10 years older than me.
John Guswell.
Yeah, and I read his book when I was in high school. You know.
Yeah. Wow, cool. Yeah. So when did you meet Lyle Hess? Because he was in California at that time.
I got down to California and I met him.
Okay.
Just before I met Lin.
Okay. How did you meet him? How did you meet Lyle?
I guess Hale Field introduced us. He was the original owner of Renegade.
So how did Renegade come in your life?
Bob Sloan said it was a neat boat.
Yeah. Larry was spent several months looking for little boats while he was working, and good small boats, good affordable boats weren't. This was before production boats came along, and people kept the little wonderful boats they built for themselves and
passed them on
to family or friends. So he wasn't finding anything, and Bob Sloan said to him, because Bob told me this later, he says, "I saw this really talented kid sitting there on the bar stool wasting money," and I said to him, "Every penny you spend here is wasted, but go start building yourself a boat, and every dollar you put into it's going to be worth $5 when you're finished." And Larry had already proven that he was very skilled with his hands, because he'd been doing the rigging on the schooner when he was on the schooner going across, because that was his first job when he came to California. He, by good fortune, got a job on the schooner for this filming jaunt across to Hawaii and back. But so Bob showed him this particular boat that he liked, called the Renegade, which was the little 24-foot Hess design, 24 foot 4 inches. Now Renegade was 24'7" officially, because her tiller went through the transom. Oh. So you the length concludes the whole top of the transom.
Mm-hmm.
That's arguable.
So well, there's arguable. So Serrafyn was 24'4" inches. So you were asked how you met Lyle Hess, and the Renegade had been built for a man named Hale Field.
Mm.
And you met Hale Field and talked to him.
Yeah, and through him I met Lyle Hess. And that was a real good association for me. He was an excellent boat builder and carpenter. He loaned me a lot of his tools, and I learned more about boat building from Lyle than any one single person. And
so he was a designer and a builder. Yeah.
He'd had his own boat building company for many years, and he built boats for the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Worked for the Navy, but he failed as a boat builder after in the early 50s. Fiberglass boats. No, it wasn't the fiberglass boats that put them out. It was the bigger yards.
well, I think the strip tank boats came in the L36s. Those kind of boats by Chapman and Taleisin. They'd build 16 of them at a time.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot of boats.
Yeah. Wow.
And it just cut the price down, and they couldn't compete with it foot for foot, So he went into the concrete business.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Curbs and gutters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, with his brother, and so he was. The other side of the story is that Lyle became very close friends to Larry and I. Didn't approve that we weren't married, but got over that too. And because I came along, like I said, when Larry had a keel timber, and the whole building fascinated me, and I realized that was my father's influence. I'd watch my father build
a girl
thing.
that wanted to be a civil engineer.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, I just caught on to it. I learned. I was fascinated by lofting. How to drawing the boat up full size, and Larry explained it all to me, and he was just starting to expand the transom, which is a very difficult part of supposedly, but it's just simple mathematics and geometry, and to me it was, that's fun. And so I really got a kick out of it.
It was a quick study.
And to be involved in actually building something.
Yeah.
There's nothing so magic as to find out your hands have a use other than typing. Or cooking. That's why part of the reason that people love cooking nowadays is there's nothing else they do that's tactile. Mm-hmm. So they get to actually hold knives and vegetables. To me, to actually hold tools and sand things and watch Larry building things, see how they went together, and then I could actually grab hold of a piece of timber and help work on it too.
And see something take shape like that.
Something take shape.
Yeah.
It's an absolute magic.
Yeah.
And then to think that not only are we building it for ourselves, and as Larry said, we had a hard time spending half of Larry's salary per month on the materials to keep that boat coming along.
Wow.
Because we were buying cheap materials, because we were just on board Serrafyn recently, the boat we built 45 years ago. And she's in beautiful condition.
Where is she now?
She's on the East Coast in Scituate.
So you sold her a while ago.
Oh, many years ago.
Yeah.
We sold her. She's had 4 or 5 owners, but the new owner is fabulous.
Mahogany on oak.
Yeah.
Philippine mahogany.
Yeah. So she was 24 feet, and people said, "Why'd you build something that small with the kind of skills Larry had?" He chose that because he figured out how many hours it should take to build that, and figured he could do it within a year or two. It turned out to take 3 years.
Yeah.
But if
it was 10,800 pounds, though. It was a pretty heavy little boat.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was a pretty husky little boat. So
how much was there? There was lead in the keel on that boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
2,700 pounds. So it was a joy to build it. It attracted so many interesting people into our life. That's the thing, that the minute you start building something with your own hands, people start finding it.
Yeah.
And become involved, and they start helping you emotionally, bringing you cookies. The neighbors across the fence got really upset one day because you're building in an industrial area that happened back up to regular housing.
Was this down in Long Beach?
No, it was in Newport Beach.
Well,
Costa Mesa, actually.
Costa Mesa. Yeah.
And the neighbors peeked over the fence one day and said, "What's all that racket?" Larry was using a power plane, which is a pretty noisy little thing.
Yeah.
And Larry explained what's going on, and they said, "Well, you're really disturbing our television." And Larry said, I'm sorry about that, but I won't use it after 5 o'clock. Would that work? And if you have any special television program, come and tell us. Oh, fine. Well, within about 3 weeks, they had organized to loosen the planks on the fence between us so they could come through and see what we were up to once or twice a week and bring us cookies.
Really?
So people get interested, and they were lovely old timers.
Yeah.
I'm probably older than they were now, but they were sweet old timers. But we met all sorts of people, from boat designers to at that time the
People would bring us a piece of timber or a bit of rigging or
A
snap
tool.
shackles.
things they found in their garage.
Can you use this? Yeah, I sure can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you built that boat from 65 to 68, was that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
More or less, I guess.
just about.
Yeah.
We launched in '68.
Launched her in 68.
We launched her on Larry's birthday, which is Halloween.
And what's Serrafyn? How did you come up with that name?
She's the name named after a Welsh troubadour. Larry's family background's Welsh.
Okay.
It's a long story, but that's the short of it.
Okay. So then you got married in 68, and
Got
then
married
you took
on his
off,
birthday.
and you planned to sail for 3 or 4 months. I heard on one of the interviews.
Yep.
And then you got a gig to deliver a boat and make some money, and you're like, wow, maybe we can stay a little longer.
We got another 6 months down in Mexico.
Oh, man.
And we delivered another boat in another 6
Really?
months. And it just went on that way.
Or in Costa Rica, we sailed in there and got to, just we were lazing around and met this guy who owned a shrimp company, and he said, I need someone to fix up a little marina. We got a dock down there. It's not being used. Could you make it into a little marina? There's always 5 or 6 yachts here in the harbor. Maybe someone would like to come alongside. So we helped him figure out how to make it into a marina. And while we're doing that, all of a sudden, the mayor of the town comes down with the boat builder and says, we've got this really wealthy American who's got a boat that's broken, and the local shipyard doesn't work on yachts, doesn't have anybody to do that kind of work. Would you help us out? And Larry says, but I can't get a visa. And they said,
working visa.
Working visa here in Costa Rica. And he says, the government wants this man to stay. You agree to fix his boat, you got a visa. And we had a visa an hour later.
Really?
Yeah, they needed Larry. He had the skills, and it turned into
In any case, we found we could, by working 3 months, both of us, on a project, and keeping at it, working really hard, we could earn enough money to take 9 months off every year, and we did that for years and years.
Yeah.
And that was the whole. We did it by us both earning enough money.
Yeah, both of us worked pretty hard.
Wow.
Larry, for the first several years, we were completely dependent on Larry skippering whatever the project was. Being a delivery, or I'd do his finish work when he was doing repair work, and
you do that at whatever port you were at,
wherever the
whatever
work
area
showed
of the
up.
world was.
Yeah. I mean, we've worked in 17 different countries, and some of the jobs have been hilarious. I ended up coordinating a wooden boat festival in Sydney, Australia, the second ever wooden boat festival.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it had some politics involved. It was really interesting.
Really? What year was that?
That would have been 1990.
Wow.
And Larry surveyed boats for the tourist industry in Colombia, Cartagena. Yeah, so trying to get them up to tell them how to bring their boats closer to U.S. Coast Guard certification, so that tourists wouldn't be terrified by the fact that the rocks were rolling around. The ballast rocks were rolling around.
Wow.
I showed them how to put some timber down there, and so they couldn't roll.
Oh, really?
And that was where they had to start to make the boat safer.
They were all round rocks too.
And let's see, you worked in England, did one job for a boatyard, and then they tried to convince him to stay on forever. But we've worked in Singapore. We've worked wherever we are. The nice thing is, if it's a foreign yacht that needs work, we just sign on to their crew manifest,
Oh, really?
and then you don't need a working permit.
Oh, wow.
That's the worst case.
That's the worst case.
Almost
I
never
see.
have to do anything.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Or if you deliver a boat, of course, you're on the crew manifest, so you don't fall under working in that other country. So.
Yeah.
So, and then about 3 years into our voyaging, I discovered writing. Got mad at a magazine article, wrote a letter to the editor, and he asked me to write something to show why I disagreed. And Larry said, "You put your foot in it, now you got to answer it." And that led to a whole new little arrow in our quiver.
Yeah.
So it just was a case of keeping our expenses really low. Not real low. We didn't have the expenses most people do because our boat was small, didn't have an engine.
Yeah.
An engine's
gotta
a
save a lot
really
of money.
expensive item, you know.
Yeah.
We spent more
You
on...
wonder how much convenience is when you take it apart on a dock on Mexico. There's greasy parts all over the place, and you can't get any parts. And people are just go distraught in it. I wonder how much convenience can that be worth?
Yeah.
Is that comfort?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Convenience.
Yeah, or convenience.
That's what the motor's all about.
Yeah. Convenience.
Yeah.
Right.
So we took a different tack, and it led us to meet different people and have different experiences, but that's what we were after.
A lot of people end up in various harbors, oily harbors that are miserable, because their engine's broken down. We just left.
We were never late. We have never been late for anything in our life, mainly because we've never told anyone when we were getting there. So. Actually, the one time that we actually had a schedule, it was something we didn't particularly like. It worked out okay. We tried when we were in Chile after we'd come around Cape Horn on Taleisin. The people up here asked us, they said it was the 25th anniversary of the Wooden Boat Festival, and they really, really hoped. They knew we were in the Pacific. You see, that's the problem with radios. Everyone else has radios. We don't have a radio, but people said that we'd just come around Cape Horn, and therefore we're in the Pacific. So, of course, if you're in the Pacific, you got to sail up here for the festival.
Yeah.
And after very, very careful consideration, we agreed to do it, saying that if we didn't...
But don't count on us being there.
Yeah, don't count on our boat being there. That if
We'll
we're
try.
We'll try to bring the boat too.
Yeah.
And so we left.
That was to this festival?
Yeah, to this festival.
Yeah.
And
Which one was that?
That was the 25th. That's when we sailed up from Chile and went over to the Marquesas. We had a fabulous voyage from there to the Marquesas.
This is 36 now.
Yeah, 36 this year. So that would have been 11 years ago.
Yeah.
2001.
Exactly. No.
Can I have a drink of your water?
Mm-hmm.
Must have been the 27th. Well, I don't know. For some reason, it was 25 years since we'd last been there. That was it.
Yeah.
So it would have been 2003.
Because you came to the very first festival here.
No, we came to the second.
The second one, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
which was fabulous. It was more of a symposium than a festival.
Yeah.
They learned how to do the second time.
Yeah, they did. It was very organic. The second Wooden Boat Festival was very organic to the point where the local fishermen and hippies, I have to call them, provided the food, and we had the blueberry pies with whole wheat crust. And everything was whole wheat.
Really?
And it was different. It was tasty.
Yeah.
I'm laughing. Everything was whole wheat, and everything was. The fishermen just gave us salmon, and we planked.
Everything was good for you.
Yeah. And we took over the whole fort and had classes going everywhere in the fort. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
We went for 10 days.
Wow, cool. Yeah, so you made it in time for that.
Well, no, we're talking about this one in 2003. After coming around the Horn, we had to sail 9,000 miles to get here. And it put a pressure on us that I didn't enjoy at all.
Yeah.
Even though we'd allowed 3 months extra, it still felt, it was constantly in the back of our minds. So the difference between our voyaging and a lot of people's is we've always avoided any schedule at all. We've always said, when people say, where are you going next? We said, well, hear of a good party going on somewhere? Or is there a good festival we should go to?
No commitments on that.
Yeah.
So you had Serrafyn for about 11 years, and then how did you decide to build Taleisin and get a different boat? What went into that decision?
Well, we wanted a boat for colder climates, you know, and we could have a little heater in it, and a bathtub.
Yeah.
That's basically the only difference between the two boats.
Really?
Yeah, the interiors are almost exactly the same, except there's more room aft for the tub and the heater.
Really?
I think it's a complex issue. We didn't need a new boat in many ways.
Yeah.
We never intended to live on Serrafyn. We intended to go off for 5 or 6, for 5 or 6
Boats
weeks.
are for going places, not
Yeah.
for living at the marina.
Yeah.
If you live at the marina, it's boring.
Yeah.
Boring.
You need a big boat to live in a marina. You need a small boat to go across oceans.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to come up with the right compromise.
Yeah.
But after 9 years of voyaging, or 8 or 9 years of voyaging, we were both a little bit restless to stop moving, to do something, to be in one place for a while. And Larry wanted to try out some of the ideas on boat building that he'd seen in our travels, and do a more sophisticated job of building a boat.
Mm-hmm.
But he also desperately wanted to write a book on boat building to show the details that he had learned that nobody talked about.
Chappelle didn't go into detail on how to sharpen tools. Or how to loft, pick up bevels. Various things.
Picking up bevels is a big part of it,
Mm-hmm.
And
so I wanted a book that would do the details that were left out of.
So you were going to write that while you built the new boat?
No.
Take the photographs.
Larry said, I learned from photographs. Other people must. I don't like, I need pictures.
It was actually L. Francis Hershop's book. He had that photographic study of a boat being framed up, and went more or less through it rather quickly, but it was really good because you could learn so much from a photograph other than the way it was put together and the method it was being built, but the way they clamped it and the way they could hold it, and the kind of stuff you could learn from photographs that you couldn't learn from reading about it.
So Larry was very passionate about the idea of, right from the beginning when we started designing how we were going to build the shed we wanted to build. When we were sailing across the Pacific, we were designing boat sheds. And so for 2 years he talked about building the boat to use some of the more sophisticated building methods that we'd learned from seeing some wonderful boats around the world and being in great shipyards in other places in Europe. But to do these details, like he says, how to hold things, how to measure more accurately or more carefully, how to stop talking about making boats simpler to build, easier for this amateur, instead say how to make the amateur more capable of building real quality work. So Larry says, we got to take photographs, got to do photographs. So when we got back to, as we were sailing back, we were collecting materials. We ended up going around the world to get back to California. I wanted to try writing as a professional. I've been doing a lot of writing along the way and selling a lot of articles. We'd written 2 books, but I thought the idea of actually having an office and actually sitting down and being a writer would be quite an adventure while we built this boat together. So we had this plan. And the other thing was, it's cute to be young hippies wandering around the world on our little 24-foot boat with $5,000. We never touched Larry's $5,000.
Really?
We never touched it. We always had. We still probably have it somewhere. Because that was our safety. It was our safety net.
Yeah.
But Larry was over 40, and I was getting close to it, and we owned a 24-foot sailboat, some wonderful adventures, and $5,000 in the bank. And we said, that's cute when you're young, but as you get older, it would pay to have a bit more.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to be quite as
Don't end up as broke hippies when you're 60.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those around.
So we decided that we made this plan, and that was that we would not sell Taleisin, or Serrafyn, that we'd keep her, and build a new boat out of what I could earn as a writer. And if I couldn't earn enough writing, Larry could always take in some boat building work, and we could work together on some projects. He'd work boat building all full-time. I'd work boat building for 20 hours a week, helping him. That was the plan. And we'd build a shed that would let him take the photographs. And then when that was finished, then we could try to put together a boat building book. So that's what we did, but there was quite some amazing complications in the way, and that's why I ended up writing a book that we're promoting right now on this. That's why we're in the States. We're promoting Bull Canyon, which is the story of what actually happened when we set that plan in motion.
Really?
Instead
Called
of
Bull Canyon.
Bull Canyon,
Yeah.
and Bull Canyon in the subtitles, a boat builder, a writer, and other wildlife. And it's the story of what happened when we actually put that whole plan into action and found a place to build a boat that we could afford to build it.
Where was that? Where did you build that boat at?
On top of a mountain.
In Bull Canyon.
In Bull Canyon.
And where's that?
It's out in the California, at the edge of the California desert between Lake Elsinore and Paris, California, which still doesn't tell you a darn thing.
Yeah.
Near Riverside.
Near Riverside. Okay. Palm Springs, Riverside, and Newport Beach, California, almost exactly in the middle of that triangle. There's some very isolated hills, and we chose to build the boat up a mountain canyon road, well, on top of a mountain canyon with no electricity, no telephones, no water, except our own artesian springs, which we found.
If there's a harder way to do something, Larry or Pardy will find it.
That's Larry's
Was
best
this a
friend.
little stone place?
Little stone
that I've
cottage.
seen a picture of?
Yeah, little stone cottage.
Did you build that, or was that there?
No, that was a very old abandoned.
Well, we fixed it up.
Yeah, it had been abandoned. So that's the whole story about. But it also shows the passion and the sheer fun building a boat can be. If it becomes
I built
your
that
dream.
boat exactly the way I wanted it. No compromises.
I gotta buy that book.
And he remembered.
Buy that book.
It's just, if I can brag a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just won its third literary award.
Nice.
The Willow Cather Award for.
Congratulations.
What do they call it? Creative nonfiction.
And you wrote the book, Lynn.
She doesn't tell everybody, almost everybody.
Yeah, it also, yes, it's actually it's a book that took many, many years to write because deciding how to write and tell what was probably one of the biggest adventures in our lives.
So that was in '83 that you built Taleisin? You started it in '83?
We started in...
We launched it in 83.
We launched in
in
83.
83.
Yeah, and Larry took 6,000 photographs while he was
Wow.
building the boat. He'd build one side, boats are two-sided. He'd do that on one side, and we'd discuss in the evening pictures that he should remember to take. And the next day,
When I worked on the port side, then I took the photographs.
using a tripod and
There was
stuff.
better light on the port side anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now that book is called Boat Building.
Details of classic boat building.
Details of
And
Classic
it's just
Boat
about
Building.
building the hull, because that's
Yeah.
where Larry felt he had the information, the ideas, the tricks. How do you handle big timbers? But
And that's Carvel planking? Yeah.
But in it, what he went out of his way, after much discussion, he decided to also show the pros and, well, right from the beginning, you want to show the pros and cons of each choice you can make when you're boat building. Everything from timbers to...
Strip plank to carver plank to three skin planking. Talk about the pros and cons of all three of them.
I see.
Yeah, and then how many hours we put in. Because being the accountant, I said, this is what I want you to put in for me. I'll keep track of the hours that you put into the boat. And you put that down just to give people some idea. Because you're a professional, and we were building it, trying for professional hours.
Yeah.
In other words, other than I put a little extra varnish in, you don't really need 5 coats of varnish inside the lockers, but... So the boat building project, and we did keep Serrafyn for almost a year and a half. Someone came up and insisted on buying her because they wanted her, and we hid that money. We never touched that money. So the whole project, in the end, left us too many of our friends said, "I'm going to build a bigger boat because this one isn't exactly right for cruising," and they'd sell their boat, use the money to build a bigger boat. And then they'd end up with a bigger, more expensive boat that cost them more to run and no more money than they'd started with. And
It invariably happens. They spend all the money on
the boat.
the second boat, on the last boat.
Yeah.
How many hours did that boat take to build?
7,800, I think.
Yeah.
7,800.
And that included the wind vane, the dinghy
Sailing
chocks.
dinghy.
Yeah. So, and
You
Lyle
divide
Hess
that
was...
by 24, how many days is that?
The average man works 2,000 hours a year.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So that's how we always show people.
Yeah, okay. So 4 years full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there was 2 of us, so it was a little bit less time than that.
Yeah.
I often would put in more than 40 hours a week, too. Because I was working full time,
Right.
And Lynn was earning the money.
So you launched Taleisin in '83, and you still have her
Yes.
in New Zealand.
Yep.
Which is where you live. Now, when did you get to New Zealand? How did you land there?
That was intentional. We didn't want to go the same ways and same places we'd gone the first time too much, although we had to go back to Baja California. It's still one of our favorite places to sail.
Yeah, that's great.
It's beautiful, and the colors are gorgeous, and the Mexican people are so warm and friendly, and the music. Other than that, I don't like. And the food's not so bad either. But we were invited to New Zealand. And so many sailing friends had gone down there and ended up staying and loving it. But there was...
We wanted to find out what they were staying for.
Yeah, that was very much. But then Eric and Susan Hiscock were very well-known cruising sailors of our era. They wrote several books that influenced us when we were first dreaming of it. They were British sailors, terribly competent. Everything was prudent or competent. And... some people call it boring, but on the other hand, boy...
They never got into trouble.
They never got into trouble, but we had met them several different times, I think 9 different times when we were delivering boats. And we'd come to be friends with them, but they always teased us because they said, yeah, you're sailing on a 24-footer, and we'd be coming in with a 60-foot boat we were delivering and tying alongside them, or 48-foot power boat, and so they were teasing us. So we said, we're going to sail this boat down and show it to them because they're getting older. And they were coming back from Australia, so we said, we'll meet down there. And when we got there and we did rendezvous, they told us, since it was our first time in New Zealand, they were telling us some of the favorite spots, and they said, there's this beautiful little cove on an island just north of Auckland. If you need a place to spend the winter, it's really safe. And it's hurricane-proof. And it's beautiful, and we got some friends there, and they gave us a letter to these people. And about 2 hours later, we were on shore in Opua, and accidentally met this young couple who'd read one of our books, and he was a young boat builder. And we became friends. He was maybe in his 30s, 20s, and he'd just gotten married 2 weeks before, and his girlfriend was gorgeous, our wife. And so we ended up palling around together for a few days, and they took us dredging for scallops, and he said, where are you going next? We said, oh, we're kind of thinking of heading towards Auckland, the main city. And he said, there's this neat little bay that if I could ever afford to have a little piece of land there, I'd like to have a boat building yard there. And he told us the same little cove that Eric and Susan Hiscock had told us about. North Cove. So we had to stop there. And we sailed out of a westerly gale into North Cove and woke up in the morning, and Larry's standing in the companionway and said, Lin, if ever I could have a little spot in this place, it'd be so great to have when we got old and decrepit and needed to retire. And 3 months later...
It happens to everybody eventually.
3 months later, we went to a real estate agent because we decided to spend the winter in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And just because New Zealand really fascinated us. It was very, very large landmass, very small population. It was all about sailing.
More sheep than people.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can eat the sheep. You can't eat the people.
Yeah, but to make a long story short, we went to the real estate agent, and he said, oh, there's a bunch of small pieces of land out there. Nobody wants waterfront. It's too much trouble. It's too expensive.
Oh, really?
Everything, your house gets, everything rusts out in your house, and,
But a lot of the Kiwis have low income, so, or if they're retired, they also have low income.
Yeah.
So everything is about maintenance.
Yeah.
And
it is harder to maintain a house that's right near the water.
Yes.
So and also being on an island,
was trouble
people couldn't
getting
work
back
there
and forth.
because there's no roads or telephone. No, there was telephones, no roads on the island, and no jobs particularly. So, so he took us out to look at a few places, and there was a couple places we could have bought for $12,000 or $13,000 that were tidal. But we said, what about that place over there? It's for sale. And he said, it's such a wreck, no one would buy it. He says, I've had that. That was a little house with a boatyard and a boat shop. No boatyard and a big jetty. And it had been for sale for many years, and the price had dropped.
7 or 8 years. Yeah.
And the price had dropped from $150,000. It was down at $85,000, and that's New Zealand dollars. And we went and looked at it, and it was a wreck. It was, the ultimate fixer-upper, but we were fools, and we offered them exactly what we'd gotten from Serrafyn, because that's what we had in the bank.
Remember, there's a harder way to do it. Larry Pardy will find it.
Yeah. And for the equivalent to 38,000 American dollars, we ended up with 2 acres of land with a cottage that looked like a wreck and turned out it wasn't. It just needed to be cleaned up, and a little boat shop that looked neat but was really a wreck.
Wow.
And
All had permits.
No, not 1 inch of flat ground anywhere.
Oh, really?
And so, to make a long story short, after 2 years of voyaging, we settled in for a year and a half and started cleaning it up.
Show them your photographs.
Well, that's not. That won't help you on your website.
Yeah.
Although you could put them on.
Yeah, I can put them on the blog. Yeah,
So
afterwards.
I'll show you some photographs in a few minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it was a real fixer-up. It was a fun project. It was interesting, and it had the little boat shop. So Larry almost immediately people started coming in, and they heard that a classic boat builder was there, and a rigger. And
I had Taleisin as a showpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got involved in the local racing scene, and pretty soon we had classic boats showing up.
That's the great thing about building your own boat.
Yeah.
You're traveling in your showpiece.
Your calling card.
Calling card.
Yeah.
And you can show people, or my wife would show them what I could do.
Yeah.
And people immediately, you built this boat? Great. Well, would you work for me?
Yeah.
And rigging, learning how to splice wire.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most. Larry has taught people how to splice wire all around the world.
Yeah.
In fact, he and Brian Toss, when we came to the second Wooden Boat Festival, we set up a splicing booth between all of us, and ended up with 8. Nick Menton was here too. Mm-hmm. We ended up with 8 rigging vices hanging there, and people coming by and poking their fingers with wires and finding out how actually easy it is.
Wow.
So yeah, so.
What year did you buy the place in New Zealand?
85. No, 86.
86. Wow.
So and so it's become a home base.
Yeah.
We sailed off quite often from there. I mean, within a year and a half, we just couldn't handle it. We sailed over to Australia for a month and came back 7 months later.
I remember when we were sailing out for the last time, Wally yelled at it, I see you swallowed the anchor.
I thought you swallowed the anchor.
Yeah, I thought you swallowed it. And I said, oh, it dropped right through, Wally.
We didn't come home we didn't get back to the island for 18 years after that one. But we'd fly back
18 years?
The longest we've stayed away from the island, was 8 years without coming home at all.
Oh.
But it's just a simple little cottage.
Yeah.
And
So this at this point in your lives, you're there like half of the year or something? Or?
More or less.
Yeah.
It's endless summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been,
When it's wintertime there, we come here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We didn't sail Taleisin back there until 2.5 years ago. Had a wonderful voyage down to the Pacific about 2.5 years ago. And we should explain to your readers that Larry's 70, almost 73, and I'm 68.
Mm-hmm.
So we're,
Not 74.
You're not, no, I got it wrong last time. And Larry's had a few health issues, so we are not crossing oceans at the moment.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen next year?
Yeah.
So having a home base has turned out to be really nice.
Good.
But
It's working out pretty well.
Working out pretty well.
Cool.
But
The way we planned it.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
very
magic.
good.
But it's all happened because Larry decided to run away to sea and
Wow.
build a
That's
boat.
an amazing
And
story.
We've never had.
I wanted to have a holiday.
You wanted to have a holiday. That's what started it. That's right.
Not just 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so the only problem we've had is people say, well, what are you and what do you do? And I said, well, we're paid to be professional bums.
So, Lynn, I noticed on the website that Larry's traveled about 7,000 more nautical miles than you have. Do you have a plan to catch up on that, or?
Yes. Only no, I don't know. But Larry just bought me a beautiful birthday gift.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and it's a little sailboat.
Oh, wow.
So
Little hair shop design.
Oh, really?
yeah, it's a Herreshoff 12.5. Although we bought the little fiberglass version because we have enough wooden boats to take care of right now. Down at our home base in New Zealand,
Yeah.
we have Taleisin, who she's going to be laid up for a bit of a refit for the next when we get home for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
So we needed something to sail on. So it's a little Herreshoff 12.5.
Cool. When did you get that? Just got it this year?
a week and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
We made the final decision, and it's getting packed into a container next week to get shipped to New Zealand.
Where is she being shipped from?
Cape Cod.
Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've been traveling on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a fun little boat to get out on, huh?
Yeah, it's small. It's something I can sail on my own.
Old man Hirschoff designed it when he was 80 to be used when you were retired.
Oh.
And it's an actual perfect job of designing for an older guy. Because you can walk around in this big cockpit.
It's got nice high coamings that you can sit against and
nice.
that sort of thing.
And
it's a keel boat.
No trapeze or hiking straps.
no, exactly. It's got 50% balance ratio.
Oh.
It's a real little boat, you know.
It's a little ship. And it's cute. It's really pretty.
Yeah.
And I've got a few godchildren who are just the age I can teach them how to sail.
Yeah.
They have a home on the island.
And you've got an adopted granddaughter, I read somewhere.
Yeah.
Alexi, is that?
Lexi, just Lexi.
Lexi,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, she's as smart as a whip.
Is she a Kiwi?
Her parents met cruising. He's American, mother's Canadian, and they were both sailing with friends in Mexico when they met, and they sailed on together to New Zealand. And on Christmas Day, 1989, we were back in New Zealand for the America's Cup. We were making Christmas dinner and noticed an American yacht come in, invited them to join us, and they just bought the house up the cove from us, turned out. Cool. And he's the head of Team New Zealand's computer design program, but we became godparents to both their children. There's now two of them, a boy and a little girl. And it's kind of fun to have young people in their lives.
Yeah, being godparents is better than grandparents because you can send them home anytime you like.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. So life's turned out to be quite good for us, but we still stick to the simplicity end of things, keeping our life as simple as possible and not owning a lot of electronics or a lot of gear. No engine on Taleisin, and the nice thing about the little Buzzards Bay, the little 12 and a half, is you can paddle at home if you have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just keep it very simple.
So I read somewhere, go small, go simple, but go now. That's kind of been your motto.
That works for us anyway.
Yeah. I think that's great.
The most important thing that getting older has taught us is this thing that we've not preached, we tried to encourage right from the beginning. If you read our Serrafyn books, we started it right there. We began to see people saying, when the two of us retire, we're going. And Larry would say, when the two of you retire, who guarantees you're both going to have good health?
Yeah.
Just because you're 65 doesn't mean to say you're going to be in perfect health.
Right, yeah. Right.
It means you've kind of worn out workers, what you are.
Well, and not to insult you, there's many people at the age of 70 are in fantastic health, or 80.
But they're a rarity.
They're rare, and when both people are, but also you're not as flexible emotionally or physically. And if you learn to get out cruising when if you take a break from your life.
In your 40s or your 50s, you're better off.
And then you've got the skills so you can do it again when you're 60 or 65 because you've done it already. You've done it already.
Right.
And everybody's going to give you lots of reasons not to do things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I'm going to give you one reason to do it. Because if you don't do it now, you're missing a chance. And you can always go back to something different in life. You don't have to go back to the same exact thing you left. And the new...
Same job.
Yeah. But you have new skills and new awareness of the outside world. Mm-hmm. You might not want to earn as much money as you did at that job. You might learn you don't need it.
Yeah. Very cool. So is this your last year at the Port Townsend Festival, you think? Or
I don't know yet.
Yeah. Play it by ear, see how things go. Huh?
Well, remember that the old joke about the old Mainer, a guy living out in Maine, and some guy comes up and said, "You lived here all your life?" And he says, "Not yet."
Exactly. I like that answer.
That's our answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows? We don't stand that far ahead.
Yeah. Nobody knows the future.
Nobody knows the future.
Yeah. Today is good though. It's sunny. We're in Port Townsend. There's a lot of wooden boats.
The festival's on.
The festival's on, so that's really fun. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. And there's so much more we could talk about. We've already gone for an hour, and But any parting comments you'd like to make to our listeners? Larry, let's start with you. Anything else you'd like to say? Any advice or tips or words of wisdom?
Well, Frank mentioned this to me years ago. He says, never compromise quality. Never. And I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at the little Serrafyn that we built 45 years ago, I would say that everywhere we spent a little bit extra time and used better quality. It shows. She's in lovely condition, but I'd like to add that if you find a good boat builder, marry him.
Very cool. Well, thanks for your time today. Lin and Larry, thank you so much for taking the time to do that interview. It was an absolute blast for me. What a great way to connect with people. I love what you guys have done. And your motto of go small, go simple, and go now really applies to a lot of stuff. I would encourage people listening to this to follow their dreams, their passions. Don't wait to do something that you really want to do. Go for it. Figure out a way to do it now. If you're going to build a boat, go build it. If you want to sail the world, sail the world. Make it happen, like the Pardys did. Also, I'm going to put on the podcast show notes a link to Lin and Larry's website, which is LANDLPARDEY.com. They've got great books and videos, articles and tips, resources, a blog. Lin's a professional writer. They've got photographs, really cool stuff. I would encourage you to go there and check out some of their stuff. And I've actually just purchased my first Lin and Larry book called Bull Canyon, which is a story of them building their 29-foot sailboat called Taleisin. And I'm really looking forward to reading that. So please check out their website. And they're great people. It's fun stuff. And it doesn't get any better than that. I also want to say thanks again to Corey and Christina for flying out to the festival. It was a blast meeting you guys and connecting with somebody that's been listening to my podcast for quite a while. That was really cool. You guys are great folks, and I'm looking forward to following your journey. Whatever that looks like for you guys, it's going to be fun. So just encourage you to continue to pursue your dreams. That's awesome. Awesome stuff. Well, if you'd like to support Hooked on Wooden Boats at all, and I'm not getting rich off this, folks. I've made $23 to date on this podcast, so that pays for 6 or 7 lattes. But that's okay. I'm having fun with it. But if you would like to help support financially a little bit, if you go to my website and you click on the resources menu at the top, it brings you to a list of items that are sold on Amazon. If you click on any of those items and you make a purchase at Amazon of any product, I get paid 4%. And people have been doing that, so that's pretty cool. On my homepage is a banner for Jamestown Distributors, who sells boat building and marine supplies. If you click on that banner and go to their website and make a purchase, I get paid a little bit. And I can personally say that I've purchased their products. They have really good prices. They have fast shipping. I've been totally satisfied with what I've gotten there, so I would encourage you to do that. Also, if you sign up for Stitcher Radio, STICHER.com, and you subscribe to Hook on Wooden Boats, I think I get paid $1 per subscriber, something like that. On my homepage, there's a button at the top on the menu that says Store. If you go there, you can purchase t-shirts, cups, mugs, hats, flip-flops, stuff like that has the Hooked on Wooden Boats logo on it. And when you buy that stuff, I make a couple bucks. So that's some fun stuff you can do to help support the show if you feel like it. The other thing I would really appreciate if you like the show is go to iTunes and give me a review. Hopefully be a 5-star review on iTunes. That would be awesome. Well, until next week, keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. And also wanted to say that I'll have a very special interview next week again, so please be sure and tune in. It'll be an interview from the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival. Have a great week. This is Wooden Boat Dan, over and out. Catch you on the flip side.